Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So for all you Audie fans, yeah, he's just going to have to be with us in spirit today. And I just realized, let's see, can you see this up here? It is a little black cat peeking out of a vase. So he's with us in spirit most days. And that is something, Audie's holiday, obviously, if you've ever seen him, is Halloween. So on Halloween, as it approaches, I go out to stores that sell Halloween decorations because invariably I will find a few little black cat trinkets. And the little kitty up there is one that I found this year. I think it's on a little, you know what, after the intro, I'll pull that down and show it to you. It's on a little metal stake, very thin little metal wire. And I think it is intended to be inserted into a floral arrangement or maybe poked into a piece of fruit on a centerpiece, something along those lines. I stuck it in a vase just so Audie could be with us even when he's not with us. And it is raining now. It has been so dark and so overcast today that my porch lights, which are controlled by a light sensor, so that as it darkens outside, they snap on automatically. They snapped on this morning at 10 o'clock, and they have been on ever since. So, yeah, I'm not expecting him to get out of his cozy little bed curled up on his fuzzy little blanket, especially not when all he has to look forward to is gloom and rain. So we have to make do with this little guy. All right, we are going to take a look at the intro, and we will be right back. So, as promised, this is our little Audie piece. And it's kind of thick. It's like a piece of foam, styrofoam, and it's covered in black glitter. And the little cat even has little kitty whiskers, and it's on a little stake that you can poke into. It's not sharp, but you can poke it into something so that it will stay upright. I had forgotten how cute this was, to tell you the truth. But yes, this is the sort of thing I pick up on Halloween, bring it home, show it to Audie, and let him know that we're thinking about him, that he is with us always, even when he is not with us. So, enough about my cat. I thought, given the fact that yesterday we were talking about AI and the proliferation and just sort of media trends, I thought we'd continue with this, slice of a modern life trend thing and talk about another one. And this is what is going on with the restaurant industry. Now, I came across a lot of these stats while I was researching. Believe it or not, I do a lot of research before I put these videos together. And I know you tune in and it's just, I'm just rambling on. I do that on purpose so that you think that I am clever enough so I have all this crap stored in my head. Oh no, I have to look this stuff up. So restaurant industry. And I started seeing articles, one after another, talking about the restaurant industry in a crisis state and in a state of decline. And I thought we would talk about that because the restaurant industry is integral. Okay, quick digression. The actual pronunciation in the context in which I am using the word is integral. Problem is, the Bell's palsy means my face is not forming the words as quickly as my brain wants. So I have to revert over to integral, which is actually the pronunciation that is reserved for mathematics. So yes, when I say integral, think integral. I'm just not quick enough to spit it out. Anyway, it is integrated into the fabric of society. So even if you don't own a restaurant, you don't have stock in restaurants, you don't work at a restaurant, or you don't work at a store or some other industry that gets a lot of business because it's surrounded by restaurants, most of us go out to eat. And I know for myself, because again, I can really only speak to myself on this, I do not go out to eat very often. It's extremely rare. And on the rare occasion when I do, it is invariably Asian food, because that is one cuisine that no matter how much I would like to be able to cook it at home, I'm just not doing it. I just don't think I understand conceptually about Asian cuisine. My failing, but this is of benefit to the local Asian restaurants, because that is something I will go out for. But here's the thing. For the last 5 years, I do not think I have been in a sit-down restaurant eating a meal. Not once. I will go to one of my favorite restaurants, get food, take it out of their establishment, and eat it somewhere else. And the funny thing is, I am so not alone in this. What I am alone in is the fact that this is maybe a once-a-month thing for me. A lot of people in general are eating out a lot more. And when I say eating out, I need to qualify this. Eating food someone else has prepared. Because people are eating out, by my rather antiquated definition, when they call DoorDash or Uber Eats and get a meal from a restaurant delivered to their home, which is, of course, another way people are patronizing restaurants. So it is common. We've talked about this before. We have entire generations. At this point, we have at least 2, possibly 3 generations that grew up not learning how to cook, either in schools or in their homes. So what I mean by this is, keep in mind the last generation that actually had home economics courses in the schools were the baby boomers. The last of us, of the boomer generation, was born in 1965. So you look at this cast forward 15 years when they would be going into high school and studying things like home economics as electives, because it's unusual for anyone under maybe the age of 13 to have courses like that even available to them, even in my generation. Like junior high school was when you got your home economics courses, and you could continue to take them through high school. So 1965, and if we add that 15 years, suddenly we are up to 1980. And 1980 is about the time that people decided that home economics for the girls and woodshop for the boys was sexist. Remember, too, that 1980 is the first year that more than 50% of women in this country, and by the way, I am speaking about the U.S., but other countries were going through the same things, although not necessarily taking place during exactly the same year. For us, it was 1979, that's when we hit the tipping point, when more than 50% of American women were in the workforce. So we have this perfect storm. We have half of the moms working, and we have the schools saying, oh, I'm sorry, home ec is sexist. We're not doing that anymore. We'll do something else instead. Now, To the credit of most of the schools that eliminated things like home ec and woodshop, they would replace it with other equally valuable courses. Not saying they should have gotten rid of home ec and woodshop, but the courses they replaced them with were things like budgeting and basic life skills, opening a checking account, balancing your checkbook, writing a budget, things like this. These are valuable skills, so don't get me wrong about that. I just feel bad that we had to give up one set of valuable skills to put another set of equally valuable skills on the table. That, I got a problem with that. So this is the point at which we were no longer teaching. And this is where you have Gen X coming along. And these are kids who were no longer getting home economics courses, no longer learning to cook for themselves. And then you have the millennials. And by the time the millennials came along, the very idea that someone in a classroom in your school was going to be teaching you how to make your own food was just an antiquated concept. And as for Gen Z, they probably think that's something that the old school marm out on the prairie taught, and it just has no relevance to modern life. So we took away the educational component from the school system. We took the mothers who would be teaching their sons and daughters to cook and left them off in the workforce. So we have, as I say, at least 2, probably 3 generations now that were simply not taught how to cook. From my own personal observations, I have known many Gen X and millennial young people whose idea of cooking is going into a store, going to the deli counter, ordering a quart of potato salad or macaroni salad and 2 pounds of fried chicken wings, taking it home, putting it in the microwave, laying it out on the table and saying, dinner, homemade. Problem is, that's not all that far from the truth of their reality, because they are doing very little more than what your average restaurant is doing these days. So I started off by saying the restaurant industry is in trouble. Well, we're talking about a $1 trillion industry. It's here in the U.S. I don't know what it is worldwide, but just here in the U.S., $1 trillion. And it's an industry that provides millions of jobs, and that $1 trillion is circulated back into the economy. But it's an industry that is facing some very serious challenges. And there are those who speculate it is on the verge of collapse. So, what's going on? Well, for starters, we have yet another perfect storm. Remember, no home ec in the schools and all the moms working? Yes, that was a perfect storm moment. We have 2020 with people being isolated, all of the restaurants being forced to close down, many of them never recovering, all of their customers having to fend for themselves at home. And keep in mind, their customers included the Gen X and millennials who never knew how to cook in the first place. And I would imagine most of them were just calling their moms on the phone saying, good Lord, what do we do now? And then in the post-pandemic climate, and remember, the world, not just the restaurant industry or just the United States, the world took a massive economic hit when production shut down for a minimum of like 3 months. If your country's production only shut down for 3 months, you were one of the lucky ones. In many areas, it was a lot longer than that. And then that scramble to recover the losses. And mind you, 3 months, that is 25% of your nation's gross annual product being stripped away, just gone. So we had increased costs after that, following an economic catastrophe. A lot of the restaurants were never able to reopen. The ones that were able to reopen had to raise their prices because, of course, they lost, minimally, they lost a quarter of their annual revenue, just as many other industries did. And then we have inflation on top of this. So here's what happens with the restaurant industry. Pre-2020, we're right about here in terms of restaurant costs. Our ability to pay restaurant costs is right about here, so we have an equilibrium. Post-2020, restaurant costs are going up. Because of inflation, our real buying power is going down. You can see what's happening. So we add to that people are becoming more and more aware of how business and industry functions these days. And I attribute that to the internet. And God bless the internet for that. It is a wonderful tool for educating people, a wonderful tool for educating consumers. And heaven knows, I am the last person on this planet to criticize education. But what happened was, in the wake of all this, we see prices creeping up. We see real income because of inflation going down. And we start to look at this and say, well, what's happening with restaurants? And it's becoming pretty well known these days that up to 60% of the average casual sit-down restaurant in the United States is getting their food from a food service company. In other words, they're not making it. You know, you're thinking to yourself, oh, that's Aunt Minnie's pasta sauce because it's from my local restaurant. Nope. Aunt Minnie's pasta sauce comes in a 5-gallon vat delivered by Cisco Food Systems. And people are smartening up about that. And they're looking at this saying, this is not okay. I am going out and I am spending, oh, and the prices are scary. I am spending so much money to go into a restaurant where I am expecting a meal that is prepared on the premises just to find out everything is arriving pre-packaged, pre-frozen, and reheated in a microwave. So let's just quickly touch back to what people are paying for this food. And as of the end of 2025, what we are looking at is dinner for one person at a casual sit-down restaurant. So this is something that is slightly above the fast food area, but not up to a fine dining standard. One meal, one person, and we're looking at in excess of $60. So if you have 2 people going out for dinner, and most of us eat in at least pairs, there's more than one of you going out at once. So if you've got 2 people, and you take that $60 times 2, $120. If you add drinks, desserts, taxes, you're looking at $150 easily. And then on top of that $150, you are expected to leave a tip. And a tip of like 20% or more. So that $120 bang, suddenly it's $150 because of the extra stuff, the dessert, the drinks, the taxes. And then that $150 is what you tip on. So that's another $30. And you're looking at $180 for 2 people to just go out to dinner. And we're not talking a fancy restaurant. We're talking a casual sit-down dinner. That's all. So yeah. And people are looking at this and saying, why am I spending this kind of money for something that arrived through the back door of this restaurant from a truck, probably from Denver, and all the restaurant did was microwave it. And we've talked about tipping as well. Tipping culture is just getting so out of hand that we are expected that even on these overinflated prices, we are supposed to be adding another 20, 25, 30%. And people are telling me that they are seeing tip suggestions of as much as 50%. And we're looking at this saying, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this because you don't feel like paying your workers a living wage. Why am I paying this huge amount of money for substandard food that is not even being prepared on the premises? And then I'm underwriting your labor costs as well. And people are angry. And a lot of people are just saying, no, I'm through with this. I'm not playing anymore. And I think that is a big part of what is going on. So let's pull back from this. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. 2,000 years ago, ancient Rome, most of the common people did not have kitchens in their homes. They would go into the town square and get their food from what I would describe as something along the lines of a Roman McDonald's. You could grab your food in whatever they packaged it in. Usually it was a slice of bread. Sit on the steps, eat it there, walk down the street with it. It was kind of fast food. And yes, the big villas did have their own kitchens, but for the common person, nah, not so much. So they were dealing with a restaurant-based social structure when it came to food. And we have not moved that far away from the Roman model, even though we had a period of more than 1,000 years when we did, when food was something you prepared in your home on your own fire that was either inside your hut or outside your cave, whatever. We cooked our own food for such a long period of time that we started to believe that home cooking was normal and natural. But then again, late 20th century, it started to be a little less normal, a little less predictable that people would eat at home, because we had a culture in which both mom and dad were working, so nobody was at home to prepare the meals. Somebody would stop off at a restaurant, a fast food joint, whatever, but dinner would come home in a brown paper sack and get dumped on the table. And I knew families that did things like, well, Wednesday is fried chicken night, and Thursday is burger night, and Friday is Italian takeaway night with pizza and calzones or whatever. And now we are seeing that coming to a possible end. It can't keep going the way it is. We know that. We know that if the restaurant industry continues with rising costs and therefore rising prices, and the consumers, the patrons of these restaurants, are continuing living in a society with increasing inflation, meaning their spending power is going down, something's got to give. So what are we looking at? Well, the face of it right now is that, yes, people are still eating out, so to speak. And I have to put that in scare quotes because they're doing this through DoorDash, through Uber Eats. People's grocery budget is including things like takeout food or food that is delivered. young people are not prioritizing the kitchen area. When they go off and they're looking for houses, they're looking for apartments, they're not prioritizing the kitchen area the way baby boomers and Gen X did when we were house hunting back in the day. Now, because kitchens are just not all that important, because people are just not all that interested in cooking. I have great sympathy for young people who are looking at this saying, what do I need a kitchen for? I'm just going to eat out. It's not worth my time. Because yes, you have to put a dollar value on your time. You're out in the world, you are working, you are generating income, and then you come home and it's like, well, I've got to scrub the toilet, I've got to make the dinner, etc., etc. And suddenly life is starting to look like a lot of endless drudgery, like a little machine working all day long and then coming home and doing more work. And I get it. So, by the way, I don't have a solution for this. I'm not raising this because I have this proposed solution. But I do know something has to crack in this current situation, because what will end up happening is, at the moment, we have a $1 trillion industry that is in jeopardy. Is the jeopardy widespread and serious? I don't know. The media is saying it is. I'm not so sure about that, because when I start to look at the actual statistics, it looks like smaller independent restaurants are recovering better than the large chains. Things like TGI Fridays, over the last year, they've lost about 60% of their restaurants. So they are consolidating. Is it likely that restaurants in major cities are going to go out of business? Probably not, because not only do they have the population resident in that city, but people from the surrounding areas, from the suburbs, will very often commute into the city for a good dining out experience. Of course, at this point in time, a good dining out experience could mean spending $200, $300, $400 or more, which is something that is unsustainable for the average person. And that would have to break it down to, a once a month event at best. So I don't know where I see this going, but I can tell you it has to go somewhere, because it just can't continue the way it is going. And I would find it very interesting to know what your experiences are when it comes to dining out. Do you dine out as much as you used to? Do you find that the prices are still, in your mind, reasonable for what you are getting? Because I will tell you, for my part, no, it's not. When I was younger, and we are going back, 30, 40 years. When I was younger, if I went out to a restaurant, they were making the food on the premises. So if I liked the restaurant, I was there for the sake of their cooking. Would I pay the same money for something that is shipped in? Would I pay a fine dining price for something along the lines of, Applebee's or TGI Fridays? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because I do know when I go into one of these chain restaurants, I know to expect prepackaged food that is going to be the same if I am eating it in Boston as it would be if I were eating it in San Francisco, because they're all coming from the same source. Am I willing to pay top dollar for that? No, I'm not. But of course, in my case, because of my age, I have a point of comparison. I remember what it used to be like. So, is this what you are experiencing when you look at dining out? Is dining out something that you can do with a family once a week? By the way, that was the norm when I was a kid. My family, when I was a child, we went out every Friday night. We were not the only ones. That was sort of a thing in our our social group, I guess you would say, our neighborhood, our community, families with children. And remember, families were bigger then. So when we went out with children, we went out with 4, 5, 6 kids in tow. And that was a once a week sort of thing. And it was affordable. It was doable for middle class families. And that sort of thing was every week. When I was working in the 1980s, eating lunch out was more economical for me than taking the time to prepare food in advance and deal with all of the considerations like buying the food, preparing the food, and so on. Why would I do that when I could go to a deli and get a sandwich and a lemonade for $3? Fact is, things have changed a lot, and the way I am looking at it, I'm not seeing it as the same value for the money that I once viewed eating out as. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. In particular, I'm interested in your thoughts on where you believe this will go. Where will it end up? What's going to happen? Are the restaurants going to have to close? Are they going to have to revolutionize their approach to feeding people? Are they all going to shut down the brick and mortar facilities and just have kitchens with a little window out the back where they are handing things to the Uber and DoorDash drivers? Where do you see this going? Because it's got to go somewhere. The current status quo cannot last. Okay, that is what I have for you today. I hope to see you all next weekend. And for those of you who join us for Just Chatting, it's 8 o'clock this evening, New York City time. We're going to look at a slideshow on the way out and have a terrific day.